Thank you, all of you, for this film. I'll start, RaMell, by asking you maybe to just tell us a bit about your encounter with this novel, when you first read it, and how you thought about it becoming a movie.
Yeah, thanks for staying, you all. Yeah. Everyone's so nice at film premieres, it's just so nice. So Plan B, Jeremy Kleiner and Dede Gardner called Jocelyn Barnes and we had a conversation that lasted a long time. And then at the end, they introduced me to Nickel Boys and Justin Nickel Boys, and knew of Colson, hadn't read the book, read it, and like what a profound piece of literature. And the process of reading it was the process of being allowed to imagine in a way that I think a lot of American writers aren't focused on. Like the way that Colson wrote was like concise and spare and didn't over-describe. So it allowed me to like imagine myself as Elwood and like truly be visual in the world. And so that process led to the POV notion and ideas around at what point in time did Elwood realize that he was raced, that he realized he was black, which is something that I would argue all people of color go through. It's a visual thing, it's a perceptual thing. And what a devastating thing in his life, as you can see in the film, juxtaposed against being a century innocent child and being in awe of what it means to be embodied and then to go out into the world and to be forced to adhere by this manufactured law. It's devastating.
So the POV idea came as you were reading the book, or was this something you had been thinking about working with in a film?
Well, I've always wanted to make a POV film ever since I made this photo, I Home, in which it kind of is a POV image of an antebellum home, which is a slight conceptual intervention into Southern photography. But I mean, I'd never have an opportunity, I thought. And if I did, it would be in the art world, it would be something that I did. Never thought about applying it to something as large scale or as powerful as Colson's narrative.
So I wanted to bring the actors and Aunjanue into this. It's unusual to work with a film that sustains this perspective for its duration. So curious if maybe Aunjanue, you can start, and then I want to hear from the actors about what it's like to work with this particular concept, this particular constraint.
Yeah, it was, an interesting notion, even from I will say that from our first meeting, RaMell kind of led with saying he wanted to be in POV. And, there's a way in which we say the word POV, but I think that's actually a shorthand for us. I don't think it was about being in the point of view, but it was actually creating an image that is at one point immersive. It brings us in as an audience into the world. At a second point, it is implicative. It implicates us in the world that the image itself is seeing. And as a third point, it's an image that has a physical danger to it, that the image itself is navigating, trying to go through spaces that are naturally hostile to it. So we wanted to shoot these scenes not from outside, but be inside of the scene where, again, that image was under the very tension and the very stakes of the bodies who were also in these places. But, it was fundamentally totally different than anything I've ever shot before, conceptually and otherwise, and kind of forced you to totally rethink the gaze where, I was talking to Aunjanue about this earlier tonight, where there was something, as a cinematographer, I, often capture actors, if you can call it that, with the camera. But these are instances where, RaMell, I, or our camera operator, Sam Ellison, who's also here, we're inside the scene. Like, we shared their space, their holy space, their stage. We were inside of. So when Aunjanue gestures, she's gesturing at me. When the camera, when the hugs are happening, that's me as a cinematographer hugging the actor inside of the scene in a more emotionally kind of present way than I've ever done, which, was a incredible experience.
Aunjanue, Brandon, Ethan, you're going to talk a little bit about what it was like to work with this particular setup.
Yeah, similar to Jomo unlike anything I'd all of us had ever experienced. And it was super fascinating to, this is Jomo speaking on it, and we were talking about it earlier today, but in the same way that he had to kind of step into the space of an actor, that we had to, Brandon and I had to step into the space of a cinematographer, and being behind the camera or next to the camera or really close to Jomo, or, like contorting our arms to make it so that it was as realistic as possible, and close as possible to a POV shot. So there are all these added factors, and then on top of that, we have to do something that is completely unfamiliar to us, which is play directly to the camera. And so exploring that space on top of on top of the physical aspect of playing behind the camera, completely unique experience. But we trusted RaMell. RaMell trusted us, and we were able to find a way to do it. Brandon and I had a lot of moments and time and space to work with the scenes before actually shooting and playing to camera, and that we were able to find sort of a rhythm beforehand. And then it was just about trusting one another, trusting that the person that was behind the camera was going to be as present as possible in the scene, and give whatever they could. And then kind of hope for the best when that action was called.
Brandon?
I mean, he said most of it. No, don't apologize. I'm happy that you talked. Yeah, it was just to echo everybody. I think it was just very much about trying to figure out how to remain present within this, I don't know, this kind of, I don't want to say divisive, but like, yeah, you put the camera in between us, and we're used to being able to play with one another and look into each other's eyes. So yeah, I think just trying to figure out how to remain there for one another, and also to, when you're speaking to the camera, how to imbue it with life. And how we did that was what Ethan's talking about. And we got to breathe together for a while, sit, and yeah, his eyes, crazy. So then, I mean, yeah, you live in that space for a little while, and then it's not that weird to look down the lens anymore. Now you can just bring that. And also, what we talked about earlier, what Aunjanue would do, well, she did it once, or a couple of times, actually, I think. When we're off camera, she invited me to bring my arm in, so she had a physical point of contact. That very much invited me into the scene in a different way. And that's how I passed it to you.
You not slick, dude. Not slick at all. By the way, this is Brandon Williams.
No, it's not. It's Wilson.
Wilson.
Don't nobody know my name up here. It's crazy.
I have fussed for the last hour and a half. Like, they got to say his name. And then
Well, it was me, not them. It was me who shorthanded these two friends of mine who maybe our friendship is done because of that. I'm so sorry. So sorry.
All right. Okay. I'm sorry, baby. All right. Yeah, I think that the same thing, I feel like, I hate cameras, no offense.
No offense taken.
Because I always feel that I'm being false because there's a machine in front of me, and I have to do something that is not false, or at least appears not to be false. And in this instance, I had to lean into the idea of the camera as being a scene partner, and trust that that what I was doing was honest. And that was a challenge, but I think that I think the glory of working with someone like RaMell and working with someone like Brandon and Ethan is that it is glorious to do that. It is glorious to do that because of the kind of artists I think that they are.
RaMell, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the process of writing. Because, I mean, it's very clear from your films, I think, that you're somebody who kind of thinks through images. So I'm just wondering what the script looks like.
That's such an interesting, it's had many iterations. Dennis, I know, the script, there was one script, the original script that Jocelyn and I wrote needed to be translated to be readable, because it was one of camera movement and it was one of the visual world, which is also, its only method of communication is language. It's the most direct and it's really insufficient. And so the process of writing, one of the hardest parts was just translating that so that we could give people who were invested in the film, those crew and the talent, an understanding of the world that was built, and not overemphasize the form of it, which was so vital to the imagination of the piece. And as Jomo said, on set, we called it sentient perspective. It wasn't POV. It was only POV in the script so that people kind of knew what we were talking about, though they still didn't. On the day when we would start to do things, it would be still very confusing. And so, yeah. So the writing process, it was images. Jocelyn and I built out a treatment that was all images, all visual movements, appended, and often initiated by scenes that were still single point perspective, that were oneers, which is terrifying. There, as originally imagined, it's no coverage. It's just camera person. One thing Jocelyn and I were like, what if Turner and Elwood had a camera? Actually, I'm unsure. Actually, maybe it was Joe. I'm unsure at what point this line came up. It was at what point if Turner and, see, this is too much time in the edit room, sorry. If Turner and Elwood had their own cameras to make Hell County, what would be their worldview? And so we kind of wrote with that in mind. Yeah.
I think I only have time for one more question, but I think I'll pose it to all of you. And I'm just curious to hear what you, I think what remarkable thing about this film is how it invents a new visual language to think about violence and brutality and abuse and trauma. And I'm just wondering how much that factored into your, I'm sure it did for you, RaMell, but just all of you, how you thought about, the approach to this film, the question of what it is to represent, what it is to show certain things and not show certain things.
I'd like to take that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I have talked to a couple people who've seen the film, and they have said, that it is a hard watch, that it is hard for them, that they come out of it feeling not hopeful. And I've thought about it a lot over the last, months of hearing that. And it bothered me, disturbed me, concerned me, bummed me out. But when you see a film, or when you are in a witness of the process of a witness of something that is about the brutalization of children, children who have never gotten justice, essentially. We don't know them. Most of us don't know about schools like Dozier, and they are a lot of them still around this country where children are being brutalized and suffering violence and suffering isolation. What I love about what RaMell has done is that he has made Black pain, or the pain of these children, communicable, meaning it's transferred to us. And so therefore it's communal. And that's hard. But I feel like they didn't get something hopeful. They didn't know what it was like to not feel alone. And they didn't have any escape. And I feel like maybe we should feel a little bit of that. We should feel a little bit of that. And I just think what RaMell has done so brilliantly is that we are not observers to what happened to these children. We are complicit, and we are part of it, and we feel that. And yeah, I think that for me, as someone who's been in a whole lot of movies that is about Black pain, this changed it, because we're not observers. We are receivers of it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I don't know that we can top that. So, but I really thank you, all of you, for this film. And thank you to you for coming. And again, we're very proud to be opening with this. So, congrats. Thank you, all of you.
Shout out to all the crew and department heads here. Nick, Nora, Batu, Brittany. You all have last names. Everyone else, you guys are the best.